All right. I think I fixed
All right.
it. I don't know how I did it.
Hey, it's fixed, right?
It
Sometimes
looks
it's
like
better to be lucky than, what is it? Was it sometimes to be lucky than good
good.
or whatever, something like that?
Well, thanks for the patience. I'm going to go back to my page here just to make sure that it's showing that we are live. Okay. All right. Looks like we're good. It shows me laughing on Facebook on my phone, and I'm getting a little bit of feedback, but we are live. Well, welcome. I apologize for all the confusion and the kind of technical difficulties that we had before. For some reason, it just didn't want to work today. Technology is great when it works, right?
Right. Wonderful when it works, and boy, when it doesn't, you want to throw it right out the window.
Yeah. I reset my computer. I reset Facebook. I was kind of at a loss there for a while, but hey, welcome. I want to welcome Daryl. It's Darrell Revier. He's a Bay Area code enforcement officer and also the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers president right now. And I'm just very happy to have Daryl on with us today, because that is one area that I think that I've missed in these Facebook Live videos, that I really wanted to try to also bring together other code professionals as well to have a discussion, because a lot, like you and I talked about, we have a lot of bleed over in different arenas, anywhere from building to fire. I know that we work with our code enforcement officers on a very regular basis. So thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I want to welcome everybody. Again, I apologize for the delay. You are here at the International Code Council's Region 1 Facebook page. Region 1 was established in 2014, and we're made up of 3 states, California, Hawaii, and Nevada. That includes 32 chapters. We're dedicated to the excellence in education and engagement to promote a safer environment by bringing individuals together like Daryl and myself today. I'm very excited about that. The discussion forum was designed to highlight individuals and chapters that make up our region. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions for Daryl, please leave them in the comments. I've got a live comments section that people should be able to see, or be able to drop a comment in there, and we can have some ask some comments ask some additional questions as we go. If you have anybody that you would like for us to showcase in an upcoming forum, just let us know. I'd be more happy to reach out to them. I'm getting very good at telemarketing skills, so. With that, welcome, Daryl. I'm glad that you could be here.
Well, thanks, Tim. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with more folks kind of region-wide or Western region-wide about code enforcement and how building inspection and code officials of fire code and the different types of code officials, how we can work together and how we do bleed over, and just an opportunity to do some more networking and get some questions answered and have some good conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Well, so what I'd like to start with first is, can you provide a little bit of your background and really that area that you serve? It looks like it's nice and sunny where you're at. I think that you're in a similar region that I am. So can you provide your background and kind of the highlights of the area that you serve?
Sure. I've been in the code enforcement profession specifically for about 21 years now. My public service, public safety career goes back to the early 90s, right out of college. Various different jobs, park ranger, animal control, code enforcement, you name it. I've kind of done it as far as non-sworn public safety. Even did some firefighting in my college years in the wildland firefighters. So my heart goes out to those folks who are out there on the fire lines right now and the victims of those fires. So, but specifically code enforcement for about 21 years. I was with the city of San Jose before my current assignment in the San Francisco Bay Area, the East Bay of San Francisco Bay Area, where I am today. And yes, we're blessed today with some clearer skies. We've had some smoke impact from the fires, not nearly as bad as some places where I live. It's horrible right now, but we're still better off than those folks who are out there right in the middle of it. So we're blessed with the nice clear weather and nice temperatures here today. So it's a beautiful day today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It sounds like you've had quite the experience, anywhere from firefighting to park ranger. Any highlights that you can think of? We all take different pathways throughout our career. Can you think of any notable experiences that really have shaped you as a code enforcement officer today?
Well, it's interesting because I started out going into the forestry. That was my coming out of high school. I wanted to be a park ranger. I wanted to be out working in the wilderness and
Right.
interacting with people out there and the different things that you have, opportunities that you have to serve the public, as well as just to be out in some of the most beautiful places in the world. But when I was doing that in the 90s, that was a very tough industry to get into. Very few permanent full-time jobs, and if you wanted to be the guy or to travel all across the country and experience different parts of the country, that was perfect. But I fast learned that really wasn't probably what I was looking for. I needed a little more stability in my life. So just by chance, I ended up in animal control, and that gave me my first full-time job and taste of full-time employment after college, and tied me into code enforcement eventually. It's kind of a weird path to get there. You think, how do you go park ranger, dog catcher, and now code enforcement officer? But all the experiences I had in those different areas, those different careers, all kind of led me to this finding that what my real niche was, and whether it's out in the forest or running in the streets chasing after the dogs and stuff like that. I wouldn't say there's probably one situation or one experience that kind of brought me to where I am. They were kind of a combination of everything. It just was kind of almost a very interesting kind of pathway where it came to a crossroad and took a chance on something new and different. And then here I am today. And then with the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers too, the same thing. I have good friends that were involved with the board and the association, and a vacancy came open back in 2015. And that one of my friends, who now actually is in a small city, she's the manager of a code enforcement small town in the state of Texas, thought I would be perfect for. So she submitted my name, and the board saw fit to give a new guy an opportunity. And ever since, I've been on the board since 2015, and progressed up through there. And again, kind of another strange path. I just kind of wanted to be the guy in the background at first and learn the ropes, but I was fast pushed into or pulled into committee chairs and officer safety chair of the committee there, and just getting more and more involved, even though I hadn't really planned on it, but very fast, I should say, getting involved. And here I am now, president for the last 2 years, being honored with that position to lead a fantastic group of board members and a great profession and a great membership. For the last 2 years, since 2019, even through some of the tough times of COVID, it's been very challenging, but it's also been very gratifying. So it's been an interesting path to today.
And I've got a couple questions that that would transition into, but one of the things that you mentioned, being a park ranger, I actually had that same dream coming out of school. I kind of felt the same way, to be able to be out in the forest, be out in the wilderness, and really kind of experience nature. And well, I have a little bit of that on the fire side, but maybe not as much as I'd kind of hoped to. You mentioned COVID, and I really think that COVID has kind of shaped a lot of what we do. For us on the fire side and building side, and I would imagine you as well, we do a lot of virtual inspections. We've tried to do as much hands off or not in person to try to facilitate and be able to meet our objectives. So what are some of those items that you've implemented in your department, or you've seen others throughout the state of California implement to kind of help address the need, especially as we're battling this pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there have been a lot of, I would say, advances or a lot of outside of the box thinking when it comes to our types of services, whether it be fire, code enforcement, or building inspection. Probably the number one thing that I've seen throughout the state is the reliance on virtual inspections and technology. Drones have been, we've seen a lot of different agencies start a drone program and sending their code enforcement officers and building inspectors and the like to classes to become an actually licensed, I don't know the correct term necessarily, but drone operator, to really understand the rules as far as the use of drones and how and their capabilities as well. We've even seen with some of our contractors where their people are actually using drones to help complete their projects. Instead of sending people up on top of these buildings to check out a problem with the construction, or while they're building a structure, they'll send a drone up. So That's probably been one of the biggest advances or differences that we've seen kind of pushed upon us by COVID. Kind of a silver lining, you're getting your people out of some of the harm's way that they would normally see. So you reduce maybe some workplace injury and workplace deaths, hopefully,
Right.
by using that type of technology. And then fortunately, I don't know exactly how the courts are looking at that from an enforcement standpoint. I know the courts are very sensitive as to what kind of technology we're using to prove our cases and to submit for evidence and things like that. But in the inspection world, for sure, technology has been probably the biggest advancement that I've seen. But then we're also seeing a lot of advances in, do we really have to be so face-to-face with folks as far as trying to prevent that face-to-face contact unless it was absolutely necessary. I know a lot of agencies and a lot of municipalities went to zero face-to-face contact with their code enforcement departments. Do everything as much as possible from your vehicle or from a greater distance even than 6 feet, even though hopefully everybody gets issued that the PPE, the personal protection equipment, just the basic gloves and masks and eye protection, things like that. But yeah, so a lot of changes in policies and procedures, but mostly, fortunately, towards the safety side, but also, of course, having to accomplish our goal and our missions of getting that voluntary compliance that code enforcement officers are always looking for. Those are probably the two major things I've seen, the technology and then just the really evaluating whether they have to have face-to-face contact or can we do it over the phone? Can we use Zoom, like kind of like we're using today, Facebook today? That use of technology too, as far as training. The last year and a half, training budgets have been cut. COVID has said no in-person training because of the restrictions there. That's another actually advancement we've probably seen in the world of training our officers and our staff, is using the technology as well there, as well as the on-site inspections and things like that.
So I got two questions off of that. We talk about zero contact. You mentioned how does that relate, or maybe utilizing Zoom or another mechanism to be able to communicate with the person that you're inspecting. So how has that been received, within the code enforcement realm, being able to utilize some of these other methods to be able to convey what needs to be corrected, and what have you seen work, and maybe what do you see that might be permanent long term? Is Zoom or maybe Facebook or FaceTime going to be something that we can utilize long term?
Yeah, I think some of the changes brought on by COVID are going to be with us probably moving forward from here, whether it be a mask, face coverings, things like that, personal protective gear, social distancing, things like that. As far as the use of technology in what we do as code enforcement officers, I can't say with a high degree of accuracy that there's been a lot of resident officer or resident staff member interaction. I don't really know if departments and agencies have been able to utilize this type of technology like we're using today to talk to homeowners about a potential problem. I'm sure there probably are some out there, because there are some agencies that are just so technologically advanced and savvy, and then there's those that are maybe still a little behind the game. But so as far as kind of doing our daily job of talking to folks out in the community about what needs to be accomplished and explaining and doing education and gaining that voluntary compliance, I wish I had a better answer for you on that. But what I can give you a better answer on is the use of this type of technology for training our officers and training our staff members. It's become kind of a mainstay, and especially with our association with CACEO, we saw the need coming up when we started seeing the first level of restrictions coming in, and we got together as a group and said, how are we going to continue to get the services to our members that they need, such as training, which is a huge component of what we do for our membership. We needed to keep that going, because there wasn't, just because we had this horrible pandemic going, we couldn't stop all of the wheels. Some of the wheels in the machine slowed down. Some of them did grind to a halt, of course. But we still needed to keep that part of the machine really rolling forward, because it's absolutely critical that we keep that service there. So we started utilizing webinars. We had been working on that for a while, but COVID really turned up the sense of urgency to get that out there. So we've started a webinar program for training for our members, and we actually opened it up to anybody that wanted to take it, but specifically for our members. We started getting more of our classes online. We were moving towards online education as a component of our education program as well. But again, COVID really, for lack of a better term, kicked us in the behind to get that really getting going. So we brought a lot of our classes online. Fortunately, a lot of the instructors that we regularly work with were completely on board with it. They didn't want to go in front of a classroom of people just as much as folks didn't want to be in a classroom in front of a bunch of other people. So, and then we even had, last year, we had our annual training seminar fully online, and it was a huge success. Silver lining to that was that departments that couldn't afford, or agencies that couldn't afford to send their people or send all of their people at once, because someone still has to do the work back in the office, were able to, from either the privacy of their own home or the comfort of their desks or wherever they were able to take our classes virtually. We had live sessions as well as recorded sessions. They were able to get the training that they needed and the units towards their certification. So that's really how the use of this type of technology really has benefited our association, and I think the profession as well, because I'm sure agencies are promoting the use of online and webinar, webcam type trainings, and even their meetings, their staff meetings probably as well, because we had those too. Working from home, all of our staff meetings were over Zoom or some Zoom type technology. So huge impact on the way we do our jobs, both with the community as well as internally in our departments.
So do you think those those virtual offerings will continue for the training side of it through the Code Enforcement Officers Association? I know for us, I'm part of the California Fire Chiefs Association Fire Prevention Officers Group, and we also had the same, where we had the training, our annual conference virtually, and I think it was a big success, like you said. And a lot of the instructors were doing it from the comfort of their own home and being able to still provide that valuable training. I do think that there's one piece that gets missed sometimes in virtual trainings is the aspect of networking. And so how do we, find ways to continue to be able to network and build those professional networks to be able to rely on other people to be able to help assist. And I think things like this definitely help. Like our conversation today, but do you find that you guys will maybe continue with some form of a virtual offering as part of your association?
Definitely. Yeah, it's been so successful. It's a cost savings to the association, but the members are still getting the value out of it. It's cheaper for them as well. Their agencies don't have to pay their people for being in a car or a vehicle for 2 hours to go to a training, so you don't have the travel costs, or if something that they have to go for overnight. So they're saving a tremendous amount of money. They're doing it again from the relative safety of an office versus being on the road and then going someplace else.
Right.
I definitely see the budgetary savings and advantages being a catalyst for making sure we do continue, and we have every intention of continuing it. I think it's here to stay. Not only so we can give the people who are up on the Oregon-California border the same opportunity at the same time as the folks that are down on the United States-Mexico border in our state, and all the way in Lake Tahoe, those areas, all those remote areas where they couldn't afford either budgetary or just time-wise to drive to Sacramento from, say, Susanville. It's a few-hour drive, or from San Diego to Bakersfield or something like that to get the training they needed. So there's lots of advantages to this, and we've seen that, and we've absolutely decided this is going to be a part of our training curriculum and method moving on forward. And we are going to have this year our seminar. We're planning on having our seminar in person for the first time in 2 years at Squaw Creek Resort in Truckee. Hopefully, between the fires that are going on, the Caliber fire, and then also COVID, we'll still be able to have that in person, because you hit it right on the head. One thing that it lacks is that that in-person networking, which people need. I mean, as humans, we need that personal interaction. This is great interaction between you and I and the audience out there, but it just doesn't quite substitute for being in person and being able to shake that hand and say, hey, gee, how's it been? I haven't seen you in a year and a half. And we're really looking forward to that. And you can only do so much of that when it comes to online technology. Is no matter how hard you try, it just doesn't quite replace that. And that's what our association is big about too. Networking is a huge way to learn, get new ideas, bounce ideas off of other agencies to see how they deal with things. And just to be able to see another smiling face in person is a great thing. It's really good for the soul. So, but we are going to continue this as well.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's always good to have those side conversations where you can share your experiences, and that typically you do that a lot during your networking and those discussions, those side conversations. That's always one of those things that I benefit and really enjoy the most, because then you realize that a lot of people are facing the similar challenges that you may be facing in your organization, and how did they overcome it, or where are they at in their decision-making process as it moves forward. You mentioned your conference is in Truckee. When is that conference scheduled for?
It's the first week of October. It's the 4th to the 7th.
Okay.
Yeah, typically we do it early in the month of October, so we can allow those folks who do code enforcement as well as building inspection to still be able to attend the CALBO education weeks in San Ramon and Ontario. So we like to make sure, because there are so many people that do double duty, that we're not hogging all their budget time or all their training time, so
Right.
they go get that other training. So we try to be conscientious that that's going on for them as well. So first week of October, 4th to the 7th.
So we talked about the bleed over, and you mentioned CALBO. How does the Code Enforcement Officers Association and CALBO really work together? It meant, as you mentioned, you try to set your conference so that way you guys can make sure to get some of those professionals that go to that conference. How do you guys work together in that regard?
Well, probably the biggest one is just being aware of when they're having their training session, just to make sure we don't, like I said, overlap or get too close to them. This year, it's the weekend, the week of the 13th of September, I believe, is when it started. I'm actually going to be moderating a couple classes, so I should know these dates. But it's coming up, let's just say, real soon. So we wanted to make sure we have some time in between, so folks who were able to attend their can also attend ours. That's probably the biggest way that we do. We don't really necessarily have a formal agreement in place with them on how to work this, but we do talk back and forth to make sure that we're not stepping on each other, and try to find ways where we can make sure our members are getting what they need, perhaps from CALBO and vice versa. Just like with ICC, we're working on an agreement, kind of a formal a formal partnership with them behind the scenes to establish a formal relationship with ICC, so we can bring in some of ICC's experts in the world of building inspection and fire code and mechanical and all those areas, to be able to give our members even better training than they're already getting from experts in that field, because so many of us do double duty, triple, quadruple duties when it comes to that. So, but that's something that I can see us looking into in the very near future as well with CALBO, to make sure we have this synergy between the three major organizations, with code enforcement, building inspection, and then ICC for the international side of things, to really kind of make sure we have the best of all worlds coming into our membership, and also offering our expertise to organizations like ICC as well as to CALBO, for those building inspectors that may not have a lot of code enforcement experience, because there really is a difference there between using building code inspection versus responding to a violation like a property nuisance violation. So there's kind of two different worlds. We're still enforcing codes, but ICC, of course, being the model codes, and then you've got your individual agencies usually using their municipal code, the California Health and Safety Code, and various state codes, as well as some of the model codes as well. So to kind of create that mutually beneficial relationship between all three organizations is really a goal that we should all be pushing for, to make sure we're helping each other out and promoting each other to get the best trained people out there for the public.
Yeah, and I think that you hit on it. Yeah, one of my questions was, how do you engage with ICC, and you definitely hit on it. Being able to engage with them, bring them in for your training. They have preferred provider CEUs that you can obtain, but also too having instructors that you can lean on, a cadre of instructors that you can lean on that may be able to educate in some of those property maintenance issues. And I think you and I, on the fire side, definitely maybe understand the aspect of the, and even I think building departments also understand it, but maybe to a different degree, of the difference between new construction and property maintenance, and that pathway to be able to achieve voluntary compliance on those routine maintenance items that we typically, you and I, engage with on quite a frequent basis, and how that goes. And I think to have that training is always a good thing, to kind of at least provide that training and that background.
Right.
In addition, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you touched on an important point. I apologize for if I don't say it, I'll probably forget it. You mentioned CEUs, and that's part of those formal agreements. Right now, CACEO members, when they take an ICC or a CALBO class for that matter, they are eligible to gain CEUs towards our certification as code enforcement officers. And I believe it's vice versa with ICC right now. I'm not sure if it goes as well with CALBO, but again, something to look at when we start to look into that more formal agreement with them. But yeah, so I mean, that's that important connection there as well. Making sure if you take the time to go to an ICC mechanical code class or International Property Maintenance Code class, that you can then get more benefit other than just saying, yeah, okay, I have X number of units with ICC, but it also comes back to benefit them as code enforcement officer with our association. So another important reason why we need to be working together to be able to make sure our people are getting as much of the best training possible.
Absolutely. Well, and I know that we just kind of talked about, how we try to build that coalition, and you working with building officials and even the fire side. How, as a code enforcement officer, I really think code enforcement is the sum of many parts. How do you build those relationships with other code professionals that are administering codes to maybe provide the most benefit to the community?
Well, I think what we're doing right now is a perfect example of how we engage with other code officials. So we can talk about issues. I even see someone has put in a question in the chat, to be able to give folks who we wouldn't normally interact with a chance to ask these questions. So we're doing one of those things right now. We're really working with other code officials via this platform. We encourage our members to definitely go to other trainings and other events where they are going to get a more rounded view of what we really do. I mean, because we do, as a fire official, you don't do just fire. I mean, you're right. Going to bleed over, as we keep saying, into other areas of expertise, and same thing with us. So making sure that we, if we don't have a specific training class in a certain aspect of the fire code, say, I don't know, same thing like fire sprinklers and the requirement for fire sprinklers in residential and commercial. If we have an opportunity to help promote something like that our members may get a benefit of, that's another way we do. We promote those on our websites and make sure we get that message out to our members, so they have an opportunity to go to someplace else to have the training that we may not necessarily have, or we'll try to bring somebody in to do a formal class for us. So I think those are the kinds of things, the kind of the outreach. We're also always looking for experts in their specific areas to be able to bring into our education program. And if that's not always possible for whatever reason, we want to make sure that our people have access, that they can go to them as well. So just making sure that they have a opportunity to get the training that they need, whether we're providing or somebody else, making sure that they're aware of it. That's what I'm trying to say, to make sure that they're aware that those opportunities are out there that they can benefit from.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys do a very good job of providing that pathway, and we, you and I both know that we don't work in silos, and being able to cross paths. I know that I cross paths with my code enforcement officer, supervisor, and the officers here, building department, quite a bit. And so it's always good to, as we cross those paths, to be able to have this information and be able to share that pathway of where you can get the training, but also to where you can go and you can speak with other professionals. Now, one of the things we kind of talked about early in the conversation was COVID and how that's really changed and impacted the day-to-day of what we do throughout, really code enforcement and administering codes themselves. What other changes or what other kind of situations have you seen that have arisen that have really had a major impact on the profession of code enforcement in your career, and what do you maybe see in the future as we continue to move forward? As you mentioned, drones, and being able to use drones, I think, is one of those things that I think would be extremely beneficial, and technology. But what else do you see that might be beneficial to be able to benefit code enforcement officers or just code enforcement professionals in general?
Well, I think raising the awareness of what we really do is probably one of the key things that we can do to continue to kind of advance, not only as individuals, but also as a profession. a lot of folks will say, oh, I'll introduce myself as a code enforcement officer as I'm standing at somebody's front door or at their business, and they kind of have this puzzled look on their face, like, code what?
Yeah.
So, when somebody walks up, they as a police officer or firefighter or in the fire service, it's pretty obvious when you walk up to somebody's front door who you are and maybe what you
Right.
do.
Yep.
Code enforcement, part of it is being non-sworn officers for the most part. I would say the vast majority of code enforcement officers are not sworn peace officers. There aren't as many uniformities, meaning code enforcement officers. Like today, I'm wearing a polo shirt and slacks. Tomorrow, I might be wearing kind of a BDU and a more like a button-down, more of an official-looking paramilitary, para-law enforcement type uniform. Or we might just be blue jeans and a nice polo shirt and that has our city logo on it or something like that. So it's not always so obvious. So sometimes we have the added duty of making sure people know who we are. So they're comfortable with us. They don't think, well, who is this person that says this is who they are? And I've never heard of code enforcement. And
right.
Tie into that, we're called 20 different things. You have neighborhood preservation, you have code compliance, you have neighborhood improvement technicians. I mean, I could probably give 20 different names of what we are. So raising the awareness of who we are, what we do, what we can provide the community, as far as always trying to gain that voluntary compliance and making sure that we work as partners in the community, not against the community.
Right.
I think a lot of times when people aren't sure of who they're talking to, that they tend to be maybe a little apprehensive, and so it takes a little bit more to gain their trust and get through. But that's our duty as code enforcement officers and just as public officials to be able to establish that rapport. So, and part of it is making sure people know who we are, but we also need to do on a more agency base or a municipality base is to also promote ourselves as a city or a county or whatever we might be. So it's incumbent upon the individual, but also as the agency to make sure they're doing the right outreach to make people aware that when somebody comes to your front door and they call themselves a neighborhood preservation officer, they're not a police officer. Right. They're still a public official, but they're there still to do a job and perhaps enforce a local municipal code or a health and safety code. But we're there as a community partner. And not to be adversarial on that. And that's not to say that sometimes we get involved in situations where it is a little more adversarial and people, no matter how nice and no matter how well you introduce yourself or what they know about you, they're just going to automatically be apprehensive or maybe not necessarily agree with why you're there. So we have to keep that into account too, which also rolls into the next thing that I think we need to do is we need to make sure we keep training our people, that we keep getting them the best and possibly updated training. Use the different resources that are out there from ICC, CALBO. I mean, any organization out there. There's a new organization called the Code Enforcement Officer Safety Foundation. That's a brand new foundation that they're focusing on officer safety. So utilize their resources and to kind of bring it all back into the training thing. And one other way that we can do this too is CACEO is specifically working very hard on gaining more officer safety training legislation at the state level, making some mandated requirements for actual specific safety training, which is a big part of what we do. And there's no minimum safety training standard for code enforcement officers in the state right now. So we're actively pushing our Senate Bill 296 in the state legislature right now to require that the local municipalities create a program that establishes a minimum training standard specific to code enforcement officers that meets the specific requirements or needs of their community, so that they can have some basic standard, basically. And the beauty of the bill really is that it's not a one-size-fits-all bill. What it is if a city of 5,000 people doesn't have to spend the same amount of money and do the same kind of things as a city that has 5 million people. So it's built that way so it can fit into the community's needs for their specific municipalities, as well as they can use their existing training funds, so they're not having to go out and find some new training revenue source. Right. So if you can do it spending $10,000, that's great. If you need to spend $100,000, that's fine. But the idea is to make it so they have full control over what the training program looks like and the costs of it as well. So, and we have other officer safety legislation that we're promoting in the state legislature too, but training, raising awareness about the profession and what we're really there to do, and making sure we establish ourselves as a community partner and really out there for their best interest in the public safety is really what we're all about. Not trying to become police officers, not trying to get peace officer status, that kind of stuff. There are some thoughts out there that that's what CACEO is about right now. That's where we're going with this legislation. That's not where we're going with this. We just want some minimums training safety standards for code officers and some other safety standards in place that help us do our jobs better, help us do our jobs more safely, which in turn translates into us doing our jobs better.
Yeah, and I would 100% agree. I think that we do run into those challenges as we administer code. Sometimes we run into dangerous situations, and how do we mitigate those dangerous situations? You mentioned that it was a Senate bill or SB 296. Are there any minimum training requirements as part of that bill, or maybe part of additional legislation in regards to maybe I don't want to say defensive tactics, but at least to be able to maintain a level of safety for code enforcement officers? Are there any minimum requirements that you're hoping to achieve in this legislation?
Not currently in this bill or in this legislation. That may be something that comes down the road. What we want to do is we want to establish a foundation, if you want to put it in building terms. We want to make a foundation that we can build upon from there. Okay. And we feel that this Senate bill of allowing the local municipalities to create their own programs that are specific to their needs is the way to go with the foundation. And then, because when you start talking about defensive tactics and different types of protective equipment, and I'm not talking about masks and eye and ear protection, things like that. I'm talking about impact weapons and firearms even, I guess. But different types of that type of protective equipment, we are leaving that up to the local municipalities, because there's so many different intricacies when you start talking about use and policy and training, that's really not our area of expertise. And that's why we wrote SB 296 the way we did. We wanted to make sure that the local municipalities had control over that, but we also wanted to establish that foundation. That, okay, we give you that you have to give, that they create a program. Let's just say a city, Pleasantville, USA says we need to do 28 hours of officer safety training a year based on what we know about our community. So they do that 28 hours, and anything that they want to do beyond that, wonderful. But have that minimum is what we're really looking for, and let the individual municipalities decide on how much further they want to go with that and what extra tools they're going to give their code enforcement officers. So and we felt we needed to write it that way to really kind of let them have them realize that we're just trying to, again, build that foundation and not throw a bunch of mandates on them, because when you start throwing mandates around, people start to backpedal really fast, understandably so, because there's so many different aspects of that. But just to have the minimum training is probably the most important thing. So we don't have anything right now that has specifics as far as defensive tactics, officer, weaponry, protective equipment, or anything like that at this point.
So as we talk about training and maybe the background, as we talk about safety related training for code enforcement officers, does the association provide like an academy, so to speak? So if somebody's looking to get into the field of code enforcement, that they can maybe attend classes through your association in regards to how to identify a violation, to the proper procedure to be able to send the notice and order, and then if there's some type of citation, is there an academy that they can attend through the association that can get them in that to be able to, because as you and I know, a lot of and I'm getting a little bit older, and so that's why I say this is sometimes
me too.
I always want to try to bring up the next generation of code enforcement or code professionals, but we are kind of aging a bit, and so do you provide that training where somebody that maybe comes out of high school or out of college can then seek that training and maybe get into the field of code enforcement?
Yeah, definitely we do. We have our certification, which is recognized by the state of California as Certified Code Enforcement Officer, and CACEO is the sole provider of that certification. As part of that, to kind of go back, in 2017, the state legislature enacted the Code Enforcement Officer Safety Act, which established the certification program to become what we call a Certified Code Enforcement Officer. So it's not required, you don't have to have that certification to be a code enforcement officer in the state. It's just an additional level of training that you can add to your profile. So when you're in maybe a courtroom, a situation which we oftentimes find ourselves in, when somebody may ask what your qualifications or what your qualifications are, you can cite your resume and that you're also a certified code enforcement officer in the state of California. In order to achieve that certification, there's a 3-module academy that we put on, module 1, 2, and 3. They're all 40 hours, and they're taken. They can be taken out of order. They're really designed to be taken in order, and they're designed for the entry-level code enforcement officer or the code enforcement officer that has been around for 10 years or 15 years or even more before the certification even existed.
Right.
And they can get an all-around training, so your brand new folks can start from day one and learn about proper inspection protocols. They can learn about search and seizure, Fourth Amendment issues. They can learn about fire code, mechanical code, all kinds of. I think it's something like 27 different classes that they take in the 3 modules, and everything from just basic stuff to more advanced. So that as you progress through the modules, the more complex the issues become. Module 3, for example, is where we teach them all about as much as we can about the fire code, mechanical, some of the very specific things that they need to be aware of, not to make them fire inspectors or mechanical inspectors or plumbing inspectors, but to be able to let them identify problems. So they actually say, okay, I know that's not quite right. I don't know necessarily how to fix it, to identify it and then get the right people to show them how to do it. So we do have that. That's open to anybody that wants to get into the profession. You don't have to be employed as a code enforcement officer to take those courses. We have a significant number of people that are doing career changes, or they are young and they're trying to find their way in the world, and they say, hey, a friend of mine's father is a code enforcement officer and it sounds really interesting what he does. It's fulfilling and he has a great time doing it. I might want to look into that. So it can be someone fresh out of college or high school that takes those courses. So we have that, but then we also have, of course, our continuing education program, which generally is set up to be for our existing members as well as existing code enforcement officers for their continuing professional growth. So we do have a couple of different outlets. We do call it an academy, but it's more formally our certification modules. But it is a great way to break in, as well as for those more seasoned veterans to be able to go back and get their certification. We've even had people just go through the classes because they felt it was going to be advantageous to them, even though they've been in the situation, that they've been in the profession for a few years. And we have one other way too. We actually, to gain that certification, we have what we call the substitute service exam for folks who have been in the profession for maybe 15 years that don't want to have to go through classroom setting for 120 hours again, because if you have a minimum of 5 years code enforcement related experience and you're actually employed as a code enforcement officer, you can take the substitute service exam, which is kind of a culmination of all 3 of our modules put together. But it's also information that if you've been on the job for at least 5 years, you should probably already know. And then you take the test, and then you're able to, if you pass it, you're able to now use that title of Certified Code Enforcement Officer. And that gets renewed every 3 years. They need 48 CEUs, I think it is, to renew that certification. They can gain that through a variety of different ways. If it counts as a CACEO continuing education unit, whether you got it from CalBO or ICC, it can count towards your certification, generally speaking. So lots of avenues to do that way.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. I can't speak highly enough in regards to the modules. One of my inspectors she's taken 2 of the modules. I think she's missing module 2, so she's done 1 and 3, and she finds it very interesting and very beneficial, even on a fire code enforcement standpoint. She's been taking classes. I will say that they're very difficult to get into. There is a high demand for folks to take those classes, and so you guys are working on that, and there's definitely a waiting list. So that means that things, people are very interested in code enforcement, which is outstanding. And hopefully we continue with that. But yeah, we've had our fair share of trying to get into those classes over I want to say the last 18 months. We've gotten into 2. We need 1 more. So
yeah. Well, we definitely, we used to do these classes, of course, in person, and we would limit them. We could limit them. We limited them to 50 people. If you've ever taught, of course, and I teach for CACEO. I teach the officer safety courses for CACEO. 50 people in a classroom is sometimes like kind of herding cats. You're not you have to kind of keep your eyes. Not only are you trying to keep them on point, but you're kind of trying to keep keep them engaged.
Right.
But we've gone to a completely online platform for that because of COVID. Again, here we go with COVID. Thank you very much, COVID-19.
Yeah.
It's been a benefit. I mean, there are silver linings to that as well. Now we're able to open it to more people. Actually, I think we've upped the maximum to 75 people.
Mm-hmm.
But even with 75, we have a waiting list, and we have an upcoming Module 3. We just did a Module 3 course. I believe it was last month, and then we have one coming up in September, and we have a couple of more, I think 1 and possibly a 2 scheduled before the end of the year, but we are going to be scheduling as many of those as possible. We're hoping to be able to do some online and some also in person once the restrictions and people are comfortable with coming back to the classroom, because those are so much more beneficial when you can be face to face with somebody, because you can only teach so much over a webcam. You don't have that interaction. But very popular. We appreciate everybody's support on those two, and their understanding when they can't get in so easily. And we're trying to do everything we can to accommodate as many people as possible. But even on the online platform, we have our limitations, I guess you could say. I think Zoom has a limit, but we're also working on a new technology platform that will allow us greater access. We're working with a company right now to develop it. So we've been getting by with Zoom, which has been great. Thank you, Zoom. But it has its limitations. So we've decided to partner and hire an actual, let's say, a platform provider that does online training, and that's their bailiwick. That's where their area of expertise is, and they're able to offer us an enhanced experience, as well as more capacity, I believe. And they're professionals at it, so we're not flying by the seat of our pants on a Zoom with no support whatsoever. We'll have people that were there, like we had technology issues, we'll have somebody that can help us figure those out, that really kind of knows what they're doing. So we're excited about that too. This is another thing that's coming up for our members, hopefully for 2022, because right now we're just building that platform. So lots of good stuff coming up for our people and our members, and anyone who's interested in getting into the profession coming up for the next couple of years. And exciting stuff coming. So
yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, I mean, you guys are, I don't want to say inventing a new platform, but designing a platform for the actual presentation of the training that you guys offer. I think that that's going to be an outstanding thing to have, an outstanding resource that many should be able to take advantage of. And for me, I definitely like these online platforms because, as you mentioned, being able to pull yourself away sometimes. It's easy to kind of invest my time on the computer, but then to get in my car, travel a couple hours to a training, and then travel a couple hours back, I have found myself engaging more in these virtual platforms. Good, bad, or indifferent. I do think that they're, like, as you mentioned, being able to shake somebody's hand and be able to have that face-to-face interaction is very valuable, and I look forward to doing those again someday. But I will say that these virtual platforms have been outstanding. Well, I know that we're getting long on time, but I do have one additional question, and you kind of hit on it earlier. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is proactive code enforcement efforts, and how you really try to get the message out to the communities and those that may not be familiar with code enforcement and what code enforcement, and as you mentioned, neighborhood preservation officers, or the various other names. Like for us, we utilize the term, we've kind of gone away from fire prevention, and now it's community risk reduction. And so that's really the buzzword in the fire prevention realm. And so how do you, and how does CACEO engage in those proactive efforts to be able to further the mission of the organization?
Well, social media is probably one of the biggest ones we use. We have Instagram. We have, I don't know if we have a Twitter account. I'm not much of a Twitter person, but I know we have Facebook, Instagram. So we use social media as a big way to kind of get our word out there. As a private nonprofit group, we're kind of limited. We don't have the same resources as, say, like a city. We have our own Facebook page, of course, and things like that. But getting your word out, then having people share that kind of stuff to be able to kind of spread the awareness is kind of more difficult for a relatively small organization like ours. Even though we're one of the largest, if not the largest, code enforcement association, a state association in the country. We still have some limitations there, but we really rely on social media. We make ourselves available to speak to community groups. I speak to a lot of community groups, not only as a representative of my city, but also as CACEO. If someone was to say, like you were doing today, if I got a phone call saying, hey, we do a webcast or we're doing a in-person situation, I'm not against going to speak to a community group in person. If they want to be there, I'm willing to be there with the proper precautions taken, of course. But social media is probably the number one. But then we also rely on our members to be talking to people out there, talking to other code officials like yourself when they come across them in their daily dealings when they're out there doing their cases or dealing with the different issues. I got to stop my phone from ringing here. Sorry, folks.
No worries.
It was bugging me there. It was getting me a little distracted. So probably social media is probably the most the one we use the most. But that extra networking, making ourselves available for anybody who wants us to come and talk to. Local code enforcement groups is another big one. In Alameda County, we have one that actually takes care of Alameda County and now Santa Clara County. We've kind of converged to be what we used to be called the Alameda County Code Enforcement Network. Now we're the Bay Area Code Enforcement Network, and there's other groups like CACEO in Southern California. I believe it's San Diego. Oh boy, they're gonna kill me for not knowing where that. I'm sorry, guys. But CACEO down in Southern California, there's a lot of different groups. We are always willing to go to talk to them as well. We have regional representatives all throughout the state, and that's part of their mission or their duty is when a group wants somebody from CACEO to come and talk, they're the ones that they go to. So we have kind of people throughout the state geographically located to be able to go to those types of groups as well. So
okay, yeah, no, I always look to see how we can, as you mentioned, speaking to community groups, and so that way people understand what really our intent is and our mission is as we move forward to be able to take those proactive efforts, so that way it leads to more voluntary compliance as we move forward throughout the community. So before we end, I should probably go through the comments. It looks like we've got quite a few comments. I'll be honest, this is the most comments that I have seen in my Facebook posting. So we've got quite a few, and I appreciate everybody that's hung with us throughout this process. And it looks like, one of the questions was the CEU training and making sure they get the ICC CEUs. I think that was one of them. And then also the maybe fees associated with that. And I'm sure that you're probably still working through that and what's the best method to be able to get that. I'm sure that's probably coming in the future. I don't know if you have anything more you want to add in regards to the fees, but I would say as you guys are continuing to work on that, I would understand that there's probably more coming.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's an excellent question that Pete has asked. I can't say for sure because we haven't worked out all the specifics of the agreement between ICC and CACEO. I would assume there's going to be some consideration to that. I just don't know what that's going to be at this point because we're still kind of in the middle stages of it. But it's an excellent question and something that we will consider, especially since it was brought up today. I'll make sure that we consider it as we put together our plan and talk with ICC. But and that's important too, to make sure not only is the training available, but it's affordable as well. Yeah. A lot of agencies are really clamping down and really having to tighten up those budget belts, and we realize that. So if we can help with that, if we can find a mutually beneficial relationship that's basically equitable for the member as well as CACEO, then we'll do that. For like ICC and CACEO and the members, all three of us, of course, we'll do that. We'll definitely give it consideration and see what we can do about that.
Fantastic. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, how can people get involved? How can people join CACEO? Where can they find you? And where can they find your social media accounts? As you mentioned, having Facebook, Instagram, and those types of things. Where can they find all that and be able to at least maybe join the organization?
Sure. Well, we have a website. It's probably the best way to get in contact with us. It's a horribly long link, CACEO.us. So CACEO.us. It's very easy to use. There are links to our Twitter accounts, our Facebook accounts, all on that website. So I'd probably direct everybody to there versus giving out all kinds of links for our Facebook page and Instagram. Probably the easiest. They can of course call us and get more information, but the website is probably the best. Way. You can always get in touch with me. My email address is very long, complicated. It's just drrevere@caceo.us. So basically my first initial and my last name @caceo.us. I'm always happy to talk to anybody who might have questions, whether it's somebody who's looking to get into the profession or wants to know just more about our organization. Check out our website and come to one of our trainings, or send us a message through the website. That's always a good way to get in touch with us as well. We're promoting so many different things right now. We have lots of education that we're still going through. We're powering through the rest of the year here. We have our seminar in October. Don't forget about that. We have more academies coming up. I'll see what we can do about getting your folks in there, Tim.
I appreciate that.
See what we can do. But there's so many different things, and our push to get the Officer Safety Training Standards bill in Sacramento. That's probably one of the biggest things I want to just kind of leave with folks. If you want to get involved in that, contact us. We have letters that we can send to you that you can then send to your elected representatives. That's probably the best way to get involved right now with us, and then that can lead to other things for you, or for folks trying to get involved in the profession as well as the organization. That's where we could really use everybody's help, because we're so big on officer safety. That's one of my very most passionate missions as a member of CACEO, is to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our members safe, and non-members too, just code enforcement officers, whether it's in California. If I can help somebody in Indiana or Georgia, I'm going to do that, because that's what I care about. But of course we have to, we're also there for our members first. But if you want to get involved, if you feel that you want to be involved, please contact us through our website. We will get you the information you need on how to contact your local lawmakers. Right now is a critical time. The legislature is out, but they're coming back into session. We're meeting actually tomorrow with representatives from the governor's office to try to finalize, get our bill pushed forward onto the desk of the governor for that signature that we really, really want and really need to be able to do our job safer, and then also do it better and just serve our communities even better. So there's no shortage of how to get a hold of us. And for those code officers that might be watching, I just want to say thanks for your support for CACEO and your continued support. Don't forget to send us a line as far as training and the seminar. Stay safe, watch your backs, take care of each other out there. It's getting more dangerous on the daily, it seems, for code enforcement officers as well as other code officials. It's more about what we represent versus being personal. So whether you wear a fire, what was the title, Tim?
Community risk reduction.
Whether you're a community risk reduction officer or you're a code enforcement officer, remember, people are more upset about what we represent versus us personally, and that's the dangers rising. So make sure you take care of each other and you take care of yourselves. And thanks, Tim, for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah,
this is a great opportunity. I'd love to do it maybe another time if you have the need, or other colleagues that would like to have me on. I'd be happy to do so. But with that, I'll just say thanks and hi to everybody watching. Some of the names I recognize. Good questions. And if there's anything else, you got me for a few more minutes. So I'll just leave it there.
I will put the website address in the comments for the video. This will be posted on YouTube, so people should be able to see it there. There should be some notes there and places for people that can look up, CACEO and how they can get involved. So with that,
we have a YouTube channel too. I forgot to mention, you said that. We have a YouTube channel too, where there's some good videos on there as well. So so that's another one that we use too. So
Fantastic. Well, and I'll try to link to that if I can figure out how to do it. As you mentioned, having good IT people and IT people to be able to take care of technology issues. I'm kind of my own IT person when it comes to this, so I'll do the best. I'll try to find a way that I can at least reference your YouTube channel somehow in that posting. But
just look up CACEO. I think there's another CACEO, Colorado Association of Code Enforcement Officers. Make sure you look for California Association of Code Enforcement Officers. So we can't trademark it. We can't trademark an acronym. So we happily share that with our colleagues in the state of Colorado. So
fantastic. Well, with that, Daryl, I really do appreciate your time. I think that this is one of those areas that has been missed in some of these videos. We've done 5. I think this is the 6th one. I think that this is a good way to kind of add to the library so people can watch these and really get a good understanding anywhere from building, fire code, and now code enforcement or neighborhood preservation. I think that these are definitely areas that people can gain some more information and be able to have a good library to kind of base it off of. So I really do appreciate your time.
Right. Well, thank you. You're very welcome, and I appreciate the opportunity. And anybody that has any questions, maybe we didn't answer your questions, send me an email. I'll be happy to answer those questions one-on-one. And just be safe, everybody, and have a good day.
All right. Thanks, Daryl. Have a great day, and I really do appreciate your time.
Take care.
All right. Bye.